Speaking of an athlete that actually put in work in the gym, there's a lot of weird things that's going on with our friend Dwayne Wade. So, Dwayne Wade, NBA Miami Heat legend. He's catching a lot of heat, no pun intended, for launching his new online support group for trans kids called Translatable, with his trans daughter, Zaya Wade. They just came out and made an announcement. I think we have that clip. So here he is. Go ahead.
I'm Zaya Wade, and yeah, welcome to Translatable. Translatable aims to serve as a community safe space for youth to express themselves through a number of creative outlets. Here at Translatable, we focus on communities of color, center the most marginalized, and emphasize the importance of parents and family.
Translatable is also a resource hub for parents, families, and support system of the LGBTQIA.
So there he is. He's gone from
He looks forced.
launching jump shots in Miami to launching trans kids websites online, advocating for the LGBTQ youth of color to transition. FYI, he's married to Gabrielle Union. He's gone full Hollywood now, and Zaya, who is now 17, transitioned when she was 12 years old. I'm using she, carefully. But it's a very weird time. Was that the full video, Alejandra? Can you play the full video if you don't mind?
Yes. 12 years old, man.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Audio?
Blessed to have a community of supporters and knowledgeable experts who could swiftly arm us with the tools we needed to support Zaya in her journey. We recognize the lack of digestible and relatable information available to youth and families, especially communities of color. And to this day, we are still learning. I'm so very proud of the daughter that I've had the opportunity to raise. She has been my biggest educator and inspiration of what it means to be true to you. That's why it's so important to create a collaborative space for the community to participate in the conversation and express themselves freely.
Now let's have some fun. Over the next few months, we'll be rolling out content, resource guides, and interactive features where we can hear from you.
We want to emphasize that the learning never stops. You can expect to see ever evolving content and resources to keep you up to date on Translatable.
So make sure to sign up for email updates. We're just getting started.
Okay, that's Translatable. Dwayne Wade's new business opportunity. Here's a little more information. Translatable provides a safe space for parents and children to discuss transgender issues and offers support for mental health and well-being. Critics have called him sick and degenerate and accused him of promoting the castration of black kids.
Oh my God.
Again,
It's true.
His former son, now daughter, is 17. She transitioned at age 12 when Dwayne Wade was finishing up his NBA career with the Miami Heat. Interesting times these days. So, Rich, I always start with you. What do you think of Dwayne Wade's new app helping kids transition?
I will not be signing up for the email list. I will not be supporting the business. Was it Chile recently that classified trans as Peru as mental illness?
Yeah, when Dylan Mulvaney escaped through to find peace.
Oh, what was that story? Okay.
Peru.
Yeah, apparently Peru just classified trans as mental illness. There's other countries too, by the way. We're both 29, so when we were kids, we can remember back then that there was not a lot of that going on. But strangely today, it's everywhere. How is that possible that when we were kids, we didn't see it at all, but now everybody's talking about it? They paint the roads with these flags and, it's just in your face all the time. I think the reality of it all is that there's probably a small percentage of people out there that might have been born in the wrong body, quote unquote, sort of thing. But I don't believe it's to the degree that they're purporting it is today. And if it's really that good of an idea, why do so many of the people from the transition period end up committing suicide within 5 years? Like, the suicide rate is disproportionately ridiculous compared to the regular population. I believe it's even higher, if I'm not mistaken, than men that go through the divorce process, which is 8 times higher than women.
Really? Yeah. Amy, you've done a lot of research on this. I assume you're not signing up for the email list either, or?
No,
Okay. What's your thoughts? Again, I'm more concerned about the age 12 thing.
Yeah.
If someone who's 18 and over wants to chop, snip, do whatever, you do what you want to do. You know, you're not a fan of communism or authoritarian rules. It's your body, your choice. 12 years old, 10 years old.
It's child abuse. Like, I don't know who it was who, like, kind of snickered when you brought up the castration comment, but that's literally what occurs when these young children, first and foremost, go on puberty blockers and then eventually transition to cross-sex hormones. It chemically castrates them. Oh, yeah. It prevents them from being able to have kids for the rest of their life. You're how old? 23, 24 years old? And you were talking about how you may change your mind about having kids because maybe you don't want them at 40. Do you think a 12-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 14-year-old really knows if they want kids in the future? One of the most important aspects of life. Not to mention all of the other psychological and physiological effects that come with it once they actually transition. For a lot of these people, they can never even have an orgasm again for the rest of their life due to how complicated that procedure is. Like, people do not know what they're signing up for when they go into this, but it's a slippery slope. It's a deadly pipeline. And unfortunately, once people enter into it, sometimes there's really no coming out. And it's just really sad to see. It's just flat out child abuse.
I want to bring up one thing. Alejandro, if you can pull up the stat that I just showed you. But Nat, you were about to say something.
Yeah, you know, I understand both sides of it. You know, I do understand there is that, you know, you're welcoming that into the environment. But, you know, I don't think any of us have any children here. I know, Rich, you know, you do have a daughter. It's like, you also have to consider as a parent, how do you operate in a world like this, right? You have your daughter come to you and say, hey, Dad, I'm going to be a boy, whether you support me or not. And then they go and make these decisions. And, you know, I see him, you can see him in the video, like he's supporting, but he's uncomfortable, but that's his kid. And, you know, I'm actually not opposed to having a place where these people can come and talk about their mental illness and have a place where it can correctly be done. I think there needs to be a place for that because at the end of the day, just like how we said, you know, porn's not going anywhere. This isn't going anywhere. So I think also putting the right things in place for these individuals is important. Now, do I think there should be regulations? Yeah, maybe you should be 18 before this could be a conversation. Yeah, I do think so. But I also don't want to neglect the fact, you know, you take it away, people are going to want to do it more, and they're probably going to do things illegally to get it done. So as much as it's like, don't do that, you know, we don't want that in the world, you also have to consider that it's going to happen, it's already happening, and I think putting the right things in place will also kind of help that changes.
So, you know, it used to be like that before when you wanted to transition, for example, in like the 70s or the 80s, you actually needed to live as the opposite gender for I believe it was like 6 months or a year before you could even begin cross-sex hormones. Like the therapist actually made sure that this is something the person as an adult wanted to go through with, whereas today they do gender affirmation. It's affirmation. It's not therapy. It's not pushing you in any direction other than affirming your mental illness, which it is a mental illness. It's called gender dysphoria, and it used to be classified as a mental illness until they took it out of the DSM, I think in like the 90s, something like that.
Rich, I do want to quickly even ask you a question. If, you know, I'm not saying this would ever happen, but as a parent, how would you even handle a situation like that? God forbid if that was the case. Like, what would be the steps that you would kind of take in a situation like that?
I mean,
and I'm sure you never thought about it. That's why
I've got friends that have, like I've got one friend that's got a trans kid, girl to boy.
Wow.
He's had some difficulty with it. It's definitely been a struggle for his kid as well, too. But, I mean, if you have a 10 or a 12-year-old, like, hey, Dad, I'm not a boy, I think I'm a girl. I mean, let's sit with this, you know, wait a few years. Let's talk about it and see, you know, what's going on. Like, what's the kid doing? Do they have hobbies? Do you have them interested in something? Do they have something that they can like lean on that makes them feel accomplished? Like, especially boys, they have to be challenged. And I think a big part of this too is that they may not be trans, they might just be gay.
Yeah.
And I think I can't remember who it was that he was boisterous, the guy that was all over the internet years ago from Brett Bart. What the hell was his name?
What,
Milo Yiannopoulos.
Dylan Mulvaney, Ollie London.
What's his name?
Talking about Milo.
Milo.
Oh, Milo.
Yes. Milo was talking about this on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's like, you know, the vast majority of these guys that go through this transition and become women, it's actually because they're gay and they think that they're going to attract men by turning into a woman, right? It's like, that actually makes a lot of sense, right? Like, maybe they're just gay. I don't know. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I think as a parent, that would be very difficult.
Right.
Especially if, like, this is your own child.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it, you know, you see this stuff on, you know, these scenes with this stuff like this where they're launching the show and sign up for our email list and all that sort of stuff. It's like, you sit there and just go, yeah, I'm just not interested. But I can imagine it must be difficult for parents that have to have that conversation with their kids.
Yeah.
I would just, look, nothing drastic. We don't need to rush into this. Let's have some conversations. What's he or she doing with their time? Because most of them, the vast majority of them anyway, they regret making the change.
Right.
And because of the regret and because it's such a drastic change to the physiology of the body, they end up just self-deleting themselves.
Man.
Which,
very sad.
By the way, Marina,
worse.
in Russia, we interviewed PBD. This was last year at the big event we did. The big UFC guy that Nurmagomedov, Khabib. He's from what part of Russia is he?
He's from mountains, actually. It's
Okay.
Dagestan.
And Pat asked him how many genders there were in Russia. So I'll ask you, is this a prevalent problem in Russia? Because it's pretty prevalent here in America. We're going to show the stat. How many genders are in Russia typically?
2.
Just 2?
2.
There's not a bunch of other
Well,
things?
Actually, Putin says there is no gays in Russia.
Oh, no, there's not even gays.
Figure it
They
out.
take
So
the
there's-
extreme there. I mean, there's gays here. We're not going there. It's
Yeah.
the trans. You know, as Dave Chappelle
2.
said, I'm cool with the L's and the G's and the B's. It's the T's that are slowing some things down. But in Russia, no T's. By the way, here's the stat.
Yeah.
This is what you were kind of alluding to.
Right.
They asked traditionalists who are basically 80 plus.
Right.
They asked baby boomers who are 60 plus, Gen X, which are in their mid 40s plus, millennials in their 20s and 30s, and Gen Z, who are basically 25 and under, how they identify. Now,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
now, so 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, 20% of Gen Z, which our young friend Wade, Wade's daughter, it would be a Gen Z. So you talk about nature versus nurture. This is clearly a
Social
nurturing
contagion.
social contagion problem.
Social change is a good way
That's
to
the
put it.
key
Like,
word.
I've
Yes.
talked about the pussification of the West. This is part of the agenda to soften and weaken the Western male, especially become more compliant and agreeable, stand on the dots, wear the face diapers when we tell you to. They don't want strong, masculine, virtuous males that can make decisions and solve problems. They want agreeable, useful idiots. And I think part of this, because, you know, we see with the stats here, it's just popping now. What was the number again? About a third?
20% of Gen
20%.
Z identify as
Identify with that
LGBTQ.
category. That didn't exist when I was in school. There was no, you know, this percent. But now it's cool. Now it's popular. Now it's like in your face all the time. But I think that they're choosing that not as a choice, but it's because of a lack of options, because they've been encouraged to look at these ways of life and embrace them as a solution to the problem.
There's
It's like that's a swimmer, you know, Leah Thomas.
Yes.
You can't compete against men because you're rated like 300 or whatever.
Right.
Compete against women and then
speed
beat
check.
them.
numero uno.
Like, that's ridiculous. Why are we letting men compete against women in sports?
Right.
Why are we letting them in the bathrooms where all
Why are we letting them in the bathrooms
terrifying.
with
like,
women?
And here's the thing: like, I do believe there are legitimate trans people out there who aren't doing the most. Like, they're not they're not on board with all of this woke BS, and this insane trans agenda is just making those people even less relevant and even less valid. The people who just want to transition to the other gender because they have gender dysphoria and blend in with the rest of the world, they don't want a big spotlight put on them 24/7.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and that's what the trans agenda is doing right now. It's crazy.
So you brought up, you know, living your truth. You want to live your best life. There's a difference between the truth and living my truth. That's a different problem here. So Dwayne Wade, great ball player, probably a horrible
Shitty parent.
role
Wouldn't want to be your
model
kid.
as a father. We'll see what happens there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you like that one, click right here to watch the full SOSCAST. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.